Sir, we'll start the class, sir.
गगन रिकॉर्ड कर रहे हैं ना? बाकी लोग पता नहीं यार, अभी रिकॉर्ड कर लो।
मतलब ऑटो रिकॉर्ड तो हो रहा है सर ये।
हाँ ओके
सर। So, sir, mainly today two topics will be covering, sir, hemiparesis and stroke localization. So, while discussing hemiparesis, I will simultaneously discuss some of the stroke syndromes, which is not related to hemiparesis, but means will cover the whole of this. Sir. Means my major source is only Harrison, sir. I have not taken few from the topic from De Jong. I have studied some vascular supply. The rest all whatever I'm teaching, trying to teach is like from the Harrison only. So first we to know the hemiparesis, sir. The important thing is to know about the pyramidal tract. Pyramidal tract as a whole, it is supplied from the three areas. From the motor cortex, from the premotor cortex, and the sensory cortex. Sensory cortex contributes around 40% of fibers. Rest other 30-60%. It is divided into motor association area and the motor cortex and the sensory cortex. From all these areas, we know that there is a sensory of the motor homunculus also. Legs are predominantly in the medial side. Arms, face, neck, tongue, all are in the lateral side. And in the paracentral lobule, which is located in the even it is also located middle, responsible for control of micturition and other things. So all the fibers starts from the periphery will converge to internal capsule, which is located between the thalamus and the basal ganglia part. This is globus pallidus and this is putamen. So this will start at as fibers, and these radiating fibers are called as corona radiata. Terminate means they will converge at internal capsule, and predominantly the fibers are located in the posterior part. In general, to tell means after this will go from thalamus. These fibers will come from the subthalamus, and there is a substantia nigra below the subthalamus, which is located in the midbrain. So all this will converge as the cerebral peduncles. So corticospinal tract will contribute around 3/5 of the anterior part of the cerebral peduncle. Rest either 2/5 are from the will be going to the pointen. These are cerebropontine nucleus, cerebropontine fibers. So then it will progress as in the cortex. Between the cortical fibers, there are multiple pontine nucleus, and along with that, there are cortical spinal tract fibers which will go further. In the level of the medulla, it will decussate to opposite side. This is the overall anatomy of the pyramidal tract. So, lesions to cause hemiparesis, where all the lesions can occur. So there are not actually 6 sites. I have reduced to six sites only. So the lesion can occur in the cortex. The lesion can occur in the whole of the corona radiata. The lesion can occur in the internal capsule. The lesion can occur in the midbrain, pons, and medulla as such, like including whole of the brainstem. And even the lesion can further occur in the spinal cord, as the fibers will be traversing as the corticospinal tract in the lateral side. So the terminologies of the various hemiplegia or hemiparesis. There is incomplete hemiplegia, means the patient is having weakness of upper limb and the lower limb without facial weakness. If the crossed hemiplegia is where the lesion is occurring at the level of the brainstem. So the patient will be having lesion ipsilaterally, facial weakness, and contralaterally there will be upper limb and lower limb weakness. If the lesion is occurring above pons, then it is called as same-sided or hemiplegia. So it will be occurring in the same side face, arm, and in the leg. So all these are contralaterally which is occurring and indicates the lesion is located in above the pons and means in the contralateral region. So after that, we have to know 6 questions which we have to ask whenever a hemiparesis comes. Which side it is there? Is it UMN or LMN weakness? If there is associated facial weakness, if associated facial weakness, is it like crossed hemiplegia or same-sided hemiplegia? If acute vascular etiology has to be determined, which territory has to be determined? Is it anterior cerebral artery area or middle cerebral artery area, or it is vertebrobasilar area? And what is the site of lesion? The site of lesions we have discussed, there are 6 sites where the lesion can occur to cause hemiparesis. And the cause of vascular etiology could be thrombosis, could be embolus, could be hemorrhage, and the associated risk factors. All these things has to be answered when hemiparesis case comes to us. So blindly I can tell if the patient is having hemiparesis, the lesion is above C5. If to occur paraparesis to occur, then the lesion should occur below T2 only. If the patient is having isolated paraparesis, then the lesion should be below T2. If the lesion is occurring in between, that means the patient can have a lesion like the patient might have a combination of UMN plus LMN kind of weakness in the arm that can occur. Coming to the 6 sites, we will be studying each site where it is occurring and how to approach, means what are the symptoms we'll be getting from that. So based on the etiology of the, based on the duration of hemiplegia, we can divide into acute and chronic. Acute predominantly will be the stroke, and it is the most common cause, as we know. Other causes include like hypertensive encephalopathy, subarachnoid hemorrhage, patient with multiple sclerosis, patient post seizure developing TOTS paralysis, and some patients with cerebral mets, even patients with cortical venous thrombosis can develop hemiplegia. Chronic causes include chronically the patient developing the progressive weakness, could be due to tumor, could be due to subdural hematoma, and any abscess with underlying immunosuppression, or any meningitis or encephalitis can also lead to vasculitis and further ischemia, leading to particular hemiplegia. And in AIDS, primary CNS lymphoma, we can, if it is occurring in any site of means one side of the brain, means then also it can lead to hemiplegia. So we'll come to lesion at cord. So what kind of lesion will lead to hemiplegia? So it is very unlikely to have a cervical cause of hemiplegia. So how can a cervical cord hemiplegia lead to, in cervical cord lesion lead to hemiplegia? So usually the lesions would be extradurally, intradural but extramedullary. That lesions will start compressing the tracts here. So the arrangement of fibers in the corticospinal tract is from the medial to lateral. Like cervical lesion, cervical fibers will be medial, then thoracic, then lumbar, then lastly sacral. That's why the patient will develop slowly. The lesion will start when the lesions will start occurring. There will be lower limb weakness. Then the patient will have upper limb weakness on one side. Or if the patient is having anterior spinal artery block, there will be actually the patient will present with anterior cord syndrome. Like the patient corticospinal tract will be affected, patient spinothalamic tract will be affected, and these two will be the significant tracts which will be affected in the anterior cord syndrome. But it will lead to quadriplegia, not hemiparesis. There is a concept of Ellsberg phenomenon. Like the patient will start developing a lesion in the cervical cord, and it will lead from lesion will lead to weakness starting from upper limb of one side, upper limb of other side, and it will progress in a U-shaped fashion. Like upper limb of one side, lower limb of one side, then lower limb of other side, and lower limb of other side. The mechanism, I tried to find it, but I couldn't get it. But one like feature one, how it can occur is like if in the same phenomenon, like if the patient is having extradural extramedullary lesion which is intradural. So first what it will do is, if there is the lesion is outside, it will start compressing the lesion. It will start pushing the spinal cord to lateral side. So this side venous supply will be blocked. So there will be cord edema as a whole in the lateral side, means in the contralateral side. If the lesion is occurring in the left side, the right sided cord will be affected. So that will lead to compression and lead to venous engorgement within the cord, leading to edema. So what this edema will lead to, that will lead to the weakness, and it will start from usually from the upper limb. How the lesion will means how the venous edema will cause upper limb weakness, then followed by lower limb weakness. Exact mechanism I couldn't find, like how the because the fibers are arranged from medial to lateral in this fashion. So why cervical fibers will be affected, that then followed by upper limb, lower limb fibers of the contralateral side, how the exact mechanism. But this is the process which occurs in Ellsberg phenomenon when the lesion is in extra medullary but intradural. Later on that the patient started developing the other limb weakness. So one-sided upper limb is affected, one-sided lower limb is affected, then it will progress to other-sided lower limb by direct compression of the tumor over the corticospinal tract on the ipsilateral side. So then the sacral fibers are lateral most, so that will be affected, then followed by upper limb fibers. So very rarely the Ellsberg phenomenon we can see, the patient will have progressive weakness. So during that time we can notice initially hemiplegia. So starting from upper limb, then progressing to lower limb. Harrison also states that like Ellsberg phenomenon can occur in any limb. But the classical U syndrome, which is the Ellsberg phenomenon, which happens in high cervical cord tumors, the exact mechanism could be this. Like I couldn't find in textbooks, sir, but this was the source which I found in one. So next we have finished the lesion which is occurring at the brainstem. Next is like where is the lesion occurring, and now it is at the brainstem. So there is a rule of 4, which is a classical like mnemonic which we had studied in during our entrance. Like in the rule of 4, there are 5, 6, 7, 8 cranial nerves in the pons. There are 4 cranial nerves in the pons. Below that there are 4 cranial nerves, that is 9, 10, 11, 12. And above that there are 3 and 4 only, but still we'll tell that there are above pons there are 4 cranial nerves. And there are 4 medial structures which is important. The 3rd cranial nerve, the 4th cranial nerve, the 6th cranial nerve, and followed by 12th cranial nerve. 12th cranial nerve is located in medulla, 6th pons, and 3 and 4 in the midbrain. And other 4 these are 4 more the cranial nerves. Along with that we have medial lemniscus, medial longitudinal fasciculus, and lastly another thing I forgot. Another thing is like corticospinal tract, that is the motor fibers. Next 4 S are like the spinal lemniscus, the sensory part of fifth cranial nerve, sensory spinal nucleus, and other things which are like present throughout whole of the tract is 1 minute, sir. 1 minute. I'll come back. 1 minute. So other S fibers are means other four out of 4S, the spinal lemniscus, the sensory fifth fibers, and spinocerebellar tract, and along with that there is spinothalamic tract. Sorry, the sympathetic chain. I'll explain what is just a brief discussion on what is medial lemniscus, what is spinal lemniscus, and fifth cranial of spinal nuclei. So the posterior column from the cord will traverse to the medulla, will rely on nucleus gracilis and nucleus cuneatus, and that will go contralaterally, go above as medial lemniscus, and the medial lemniscus is always medial, and these carry the posterior column fibers like vibration tent, proprioception, and fine touch. Whereas spinal lemniscus, it is from the anterior spinothalamic tract, means the spinothalamic tract. So the spinothalamic tract cross at the particular spinal level only, then it will progress above as spinal lemniscus, which will not rely in any of the nuclei in the brainstem. Directly it go and rely in the thalamus there. So there is nuclei for the fine touch, proprioception, and vibrations in the medulla. That is nucleus cuneatus and nucleus gracilis and nucleus cuneatus. And coming to the spinocerebellar tract, there are two tracts, dorsal and ventral. So the dorsal tracts will start from the spinal cord, will progress above. In the medulla, it doesn't rely, but these fibers is present laterally, will go from the inferior cerebellar peduncle to the cerebellum. It is ipsilaterally. This doesn't have much of significance. These two has to be remembered. So the extension of rule of 4 is like, sir, in any lesion, the arrangement of fibers will be like, we know that there is posteriorly we have sensory fibers, and anteriorly we'll be having motor fibers. And along the extension of 4, that is that there will be motor, there will be sensory, there will be cranial and nuclei in a brainstem, and along with that there will be cerebellar peduncles. So we know that there are 3 cerebellar peduncles, each connected to the cerebellum by inferior cerebellar peduncle is connected to the connects the cerebellum to the medulla, middle cerebellar peduncle to the midbrain to the cerebellum, and the superior the cerebellar peduncle connects from the midbrain to the cerebellum. So this will be the actual arrangement of fibers also within the brainstem, roughly. I have made it like I'll be explaining in this rule only, and majority of the times it does fit into the extension of means this rule of 4, like starting from motor, sensory, cranial nerve nuclei, then followed by cerebellar peduncles. So first we'll be studying the blood supply to the brainstem and cerebellum. So it is supplied by the vertebral artery, which is coming from the particular right subclavian, and innominate artery from the aorta. Then it will join at pontomedullary junction and form basilar artery, and the basilar artery further goes up to the level of the midbrain, upper level of the midbrain. It divides into other two, divide into posterior cerebral artery. This is the actual overview of what is happening in the brainstem, how the brainstem is getting supplied from the vertebrobasilar system. So if we go in depth, the vertebral artery itself has 4 parts like V1, V2, V3, and V4. So with respect to that, we'll not be going to the each of the course of the vertebral artery. We'll be starting from the where it has entered the foramen magnum. So the two vertebral arteries, when has entered the foramen magnum, will join at the pontomedullary junction. This is pons, this is midbrain, and this is cerebellum. Medulla. And the either side there is cerebellar hemispheres. So the vertebral artery will join at pontomedullary junction. Before joining, it will give two important arteries. So in the medulla, in the medially, it will be supplying the medial medulla, and laterally it will give rise to two important arteries: posterior inferior cerebellar artery. So and the anterior spinal artery arises from the vertebral artery by the joining of the two supply which go downwardsly. This is in overview of the vertebral artery. Like posterior inferior cerebellar artery is important, and other medial medial brainstem blood vessels also are important. Next, coming to the basilar artery, which will start from the pontomedullary junction, which will progress above. It has more significance. Like it will be giving more fibers. The artery supply. So within the pons, we can divide into medial pons and lateral pons. And when the basilar artery is formed at the pontomedullary junction, so it will progress above to divide to at the level of the midbrain to posterior cerebral arteries, two posterior cerebral arteries. So what are the arteries does it give? It gives medially many short fibers, blood vessels, which will be supplying the medial pons, and it is around 10 to 12, and later it also give rise to short circumferential vessels, which is around 5 to 7, which will be supplying the lateral pons also. And just after starting of the basilar artery, there is another important artery which is supplying the cerebellum also. This is anterior inferior cerebellar artery. And we'll be studying the particular blood vessels according to this, means which blood vessel is affected, what it will cause. And before giving rise to posterior cerebellar artery, the basilar artery gives also another important artery, that is superior cerebellar artery. So as a whole, the cerebellum, first the vertebral artery will give pica, that is posterior inferior cerebellar artery. The basilar artery will give superior cerebellar artery, and there are two inferior cerebellar arteries, that is one is anterior inferior cerebellar artery, and the other one is pica, which is supplied from the vertebral artery. This is the blood supply of cerebellum. So further, just to give an overview of posterior cerebral artery, which is formed from the division of the basilar artery at the level of the midbrain. So the origin can happen at various levels. Like on 70% of cases, it will be the division from the basilar artery only. In 20% of cases, the internal carotid artery will give via the posterior communicating artery will give posterior cerebral artery. So there will be connection within the basilar artery, but this will not be the contributing vessel for the posterior cerebral artery. And in 5% of cases, in other 5 to 10% of cases, like directly the ICA give rise to posterior cerebral artery. There is no posterior communicating artery, means via the posterior communicating artery. There is no blood vessel which is running to the posterior cerebral part. So directly the internal carotid artery will supply the posterior cerebral artery. So to summarize as a whole, so the vertebral artery, the medulla is supplied by the vertebral artery and either lateral side by the pica. At the pons, there is basilar artery, and it gives rise to small blood vessels which will be supplying the medial pons, and the lateral long circumferential which will be supplying the lateral pons. And along with that, anterior inferior cerebral artery also give rise to blood vessels which will supply the lateral part of the pons. And at the level of the midbrain, even the basilar artery, some amount it contributes to the midbrain, and even the posterior cerebral artery will supply the midbrain. And as we discussed the cerebellum, what are the blood vessels it is getting. So now we'll study the cross section of the medulla, like how what are the fiber arrangement and what are the cranial nerve nuclei, and accordingly what things can when blood vessels is getting affected, what can it leads to. That part we'll be studying from here. Coming to the first cross section of the medulla, I have just simplified in the same fashion in the extension of this is a rule of 4 only. First, motor fibers which is present medially is the corticospinal tract. Then we had discussed that there is medial lemniscus, which is an posterior or the dorsal column. Just we can remember the medial lemniscus as the posterior dorsal column. Those sensation will be carried by the medial lemniscus. And we had also discussed that the out of the 4 cranial nerve which is present medially is the 12th cranial nerve, which is present medially. And rest other cranial nerve which are present within the medulla are 9th cranial nerve, 10th cranial nerve, and 11th cranial part of 11th cranial nerve. There is nucleus ambiguous which supply the motor supply to the 10th cranial nerve, which will supply the pharynx and the larynx muscles, and even the 9th cranial nerve which will supply the stylopharyngeus. There is another important nuclei within the near the vicinity of this cranial nuclei, that thing is nucleus tractus solitarius. So which will receive the taste sensation from the so it will via the 9th nerve, via the 10th nerve, via the 11th nerve. And this nucleus tractus solitarius will extend up to the upper part of the lower part of the pons also. So there it will be receiving the supply from the 7th nerve also. The 7th nerve is located in the pons. So anterior 2/3 it will be receiving from the 7th cranial nerve, and the posterior 1/3 and the pharynx vessels, pharyngeal part will be, the taste sensation will be taken by the 9th nerve, and the rest by the 10th nerve. So all will be supplying to the nucleus tractus solitarius. So these fibers are yet to decussate at the level of medulla. So I'm not discussing the upper medulla and the lower medulla part. Lower medulla part, if at all, if any stroke does occur, or if any vascular etiology leading to hemiplegia, so there will be lesion will be similar to the cervical lesion. So ipsilateral weakness will be there, all those things, and along with that there will be incomplete hemiplegia. So first we'll be studying, there are in every level we'll be studying into 2 parts: medial syndromes and the lateral syndromes. So first we'll be studying the medial medullary syndrome. So we have we know that there are out of when we do the examination, what all the things will be happening. So on the when the medial medullary syndrome means what are the arteries affected? So the artery which was supplying the medial part of the medulla were the vertebral artery, but these were short vertebral arteries. So when this is affected, or sometimes the lower part of the basilar artery also will give rise to medial medullary syndrome. What all the things happens here? So on the same side, it can occur on the same side and it can occur on the opposite side. So what things occurred, what all the things occur in the same side? Like there will be, in general, if I want to tell one rule, the cranial nerve nuclei, whichever it is affected, it will be ipsilateral. And whatever the motor features it will be usually contralateral. And whatever the sensory features which you will be seeing, it will be both contralateral and ipsilateral. And usually the contralateral will be the spinal lemniscus or the medial lemniscus. So we'll be studying how this will lead to this particular syndrome, and what are the clinical features will be getting. So in this, if the motor fibers that the corticospinal tract is affected here, so it is contralateral, so it will supply contralaterally. So the patient will have right side, opposite side weakness, and that weakness will be UMN type. The face will be spared here. What happens to the sensory fibers here? The sensory fibers has already traversed from the nucleus, cuneatus and gracilis and forming the medial lemniscus. So these fibers will be affected. So medial lemniscus fibers will be affected, indicating the dorsal column pathway which is affected. And medially we know that which cranial nerve is there? 12th cranial nerve. The 12th cranial nerve will be affected, but on the same side, that is ipsilateral 12th cranial nerve will be affected. And coming to the cerebellar features, plus or minus, it might be there or it might not be there. So because the medially the fibers are not there, spinocerebellar tract is not there, and even the posteriorly it will not, the medial fibers, the blood vessels will not be able to supply whole of this thing, but the posterior inferior cerebral peduncle will be somewhat spared. This is about the medial medullary syndrome. So we can tell a mnemonic like PML12. So pyramidal tract, medial longitudinal, medial lemniscus, and along with the 12th cranial, which will be affected in the medial medullary syndrome. Coming to the lateral medullary syndrome, which we have studied from MBBS level also, like what all things can be affected here. So the medial thing will be spared here. So P, M, ML, 12 will be spared. Rest, leaving 12. What are there? 9, 10, 11. Nucleus tractus solitarius. And along with that patient, spinal lemniscus will be affected. What are the arteries contribute to lateral medullary syndrome? There are 5 arteries which is given in Harrison, like vertebral artery, posterior inferior cerebellar artery, and lateral medullary arteries. And it is of 3: superior, middle, and inferior. These arteries, whenever they are affected, it will lead to lateral medullary syndrome. So what we will be seeing, like the weakness on the contralateral side will not be affected here, because the lateral fibers doesn't supply the medial corticospinal tract as the lateral blood vessels. What happens to the sensory part? The sensory part on the contralateral side, which will be affected here, is the spinal lemniscus, which will be affected. So the contralateral pain and temperature is affected. And what happens to the another important thing which I forgot to add there is the sensory fibers which are present Even in the medulla is the fifth spinal lemniscus. So the fifth cranial nuclei is present whole of from the medulla to the pons and extends up to the midbrain. And it is located laterally. And there is a principal sensory nuclei which is there at the level of the mid pons. What happens to the cranial nerve which will be affected? Like patient will have dysphagia, dysarthria due to involvement of 9th and 10th cranial nerve, and the 11th cranial nerve patient, when we test for the particular cranial nerve examination, shrugging of shoulders, all those will be affected because the cranial part of the 11th cranial nerve also is affected. And laterally it is supplied from the vertebral artery will supply the cerebellar part, like inferior cerebellar peduncle is affected, and even the spinocerebellar tract also are affected, which might be dorsal or ventral. All these three, ventral spinocerebellar tract and dorsal spinocerebellar tract, and along with it inferior cerebellar peduncle if it is affected, and pica itself supplies the cerebellum. So even if this is affected, it will lead to cerebellar features, like patient will have ataxia, nystagmus, and particular examination findings abnormality will be getting dysdiadochokinesia, finger node test abnormality on the ipsilateral on the same side. So this should be written above, like on the same side the patient will have cranial abnormalities, and the patient will have ipsilaterally the ataxia and along cerebellar ataxia will be seen in the ipsilaterally. The concept of fifth cranial nerve nuclei just we have discussed. Coming to that total, there is no hard and fast rule, like the patient cannot have multiple syndromes together. The patient can have multiple syndromes together. If the vertebral artery is affected, like the other vertebral artery will try to compensate. If the basilar artery is affected, means whole of the pons will be affected. Further, midbrain also will be affected, and posterior cerebellar artery also is affected. As a whole, the patient will develop brainstem syndrome also. Along with that, patient will be having the posterior cerebellar artery, means the patient, whatever the supply will be there, it will supply the medial temporal artery or temporal fibers, and the lateral and it will supply the occipital lobe also. So those findings also will be getting. So if at all, if we can get the total medullary syndrome, like the patient will be having medial features and the lateral features on the same side, on the contralateral side, what will be seeing in the contralateral side will be seeing UMN type of weakness. On the same side will be on the contralateral side will be which fibers will be affected, medial lemniscus also. And the cranial which will be affected on the same side is 12th, and along with that 9, 10, 11 also will be affected, and the cerebellar symptoms also will be seen, which will be on the same side. And other sensory fibers which will be affected on the contralaterally is spinal lemniscus also, and the fifth cranial nuclei. Sorry, this fifth cranial nuclei will come in the same side. Just we can remember that the cranial nerve features will be usually ipsilateral, if at all it is occurring. Coming to lateral pontine medullary syndrome, if the arteries which are affected are vertebral artery also here also, and along with that patient basilar lower basilar artery, if it is affected, the patient can develop lateral pontomedullary syndrome. So the patient will be having both this total medullary syndrome plus inferior pontine syndrome. So we'll discuss the inferior pontine syndrome in further slide. So what, according to Harrison, they have divided the lesion at pons at 3 levels. So it can be divided at the upper pons, at the mid pons, and at the lower pons. And all the at all levels, we'll be having medial syndromes and lateral syndromes. So first we'll be discussing about the lesion at the inferior pons. So what are the fibers which will be seen in the inferior pons? To discuss as a whole, we'll be dividing the pons into four levels as we had earlier discussed: motor, sensory, cranial nuclei, and cerebral peduncles. So one thing which I have to mention here is about the cerebellum, the peduncles. So whatever there are fibers in the in the motor area, we have corticospinal tract which is there, and along with that there are multiple corticopontine fibers also. So what are these? The there are multiple pontine nuclei. This will receive supply from the cerebellum, and this will traverse on the either side contralaterally to the other cerebellum. So these fibers are cerebropontine fibers will be there, which will further go to pontocerebral pathway. So how the pons will look as when we'll be seeing, there will be mild sulcus, and along with that multiple fibers will be running around. So whatever the fibers are coming from the cortex, it will rely in the spinal pontine nuclei, and these fibers will traverse the contralaterally to the particular cerebellum. This is about the cerebroponto cerebellar pathway, and this will contribute to the middle cerebral pathway. Middle cerebral peduncle predominantly. And along with that corticospinal tract, which will be embedded within the corticospinal tract, which will progress downwards. And it is always, as we had earlier discussed, the corticospinal tract will be always, the motor fibers will be always medially. What happens here? Next thing is about the spinal part. The thing about the sensory fibers which will be affected here are, the sensory fibers which are present here are medial lemniscus, which will be always medially. Along with that, the patient will be having spinal lemniscus. Now the picture of lateral lemniscus will come here. We'll discuss smallly about the lateral lemniscus. Lateral lemniscus is formed by the fibers from the cochlear nerve, and it is also contralaterally. Means the fibers at the level of pons, at the level of the lower pons only, there is sixth cranial nerve, which will be located medially, seventh cranial nerve, and eighth cranial nerve. The vestibular nuclei, the eighth cranial nerve has two parts, like vestibular nuclei and cochlear part. The vestibular nuclei is like a diamond shaped. So it will extend up to from the pons, it will extend up to the medulla also. So even the medullary lesions can, if it is divided into further four parts, the vestibular nuclei: superior part, medial part, lateral part, and inferior part. The inferior part of the vestibular nuclei will be affected if the medulla is affected. This will be discussing, but I'm dividing this topic as like so that we'll be fixing to we'll be able to understand as a whole. The eighth cranial nerve, the inferior part will extend up to the medulla also. The cochlear part has two nuclei, ventral and dorsal. So this cochlear nuclei is present laterally to the seventh cranial nerve. The vestibular nuclei is present behind the seventh cranial nerve, and there is some part of the fibers which will go medially also. The medial vestibular nuclei will go medially also. This has to be not to be forgotten. Wait, I'll draw properly. The sixth cranial nerve will be located medially. The seventh cranial nerve, which will form the facial colliculus. There will be a rounding up around the sixth cranial nerve fibers, and that's why there is a posterior elevation which is called as facial colliculus at the level of pons only. And there is a vestibular nuclei which is diamond shaped. The medial fibers will be medial, and along with that superior, lateral and inferior fibers. Most laterally will be the cochlear nuclei, ventral and dorsal. These are the arrangement of nuclei of cranial nuclei at the level of pons, at the level of lower pons. 6 will be medial, 7, 8 will be lateral. And these fibers which are going from the pontine nuclei to the cerebellar, this information of the cerebrum will go to the cerebellum via this pathway only. Medial cerebral peduncle. So what is if the lesion is occurring at the inferior level of pons and producing medial pontine syndrome? So medially, what all things we have? There is corticospinal tract, that is motor fibers. There is sixth cranial nerve. And another important point is there is a nuclei which helps us for the conjugate gaze. If you want to look at the right, means there should be contraction of the left rectus, which is applied by sixth nerve, and the medial rectus, which is applied from the third nerve, which has to be contributed by the means there is a particular nuclei which will control the conjugate gaze. It is also located medially, and along with that, this is about the cranial nerve. About the sensory fibers, there is medial lemniscus. And we had discussed that eighth fibers also will be coming, eight vestibular fibers also will be affected here medially. So when we have a lesion at the inferior pons, or when there is a vascular etiology at the inferior pons, so what will happen in the same side? What will happen on the contralateral side? So the patient will have contralateral UMN type of weakness, motor weakness will be there. And along with that, here the patient still can have facial weakness, because this corticospinal tract has to also supply to the seventh cranial nerve. If this is affected, means even the seventh cranial nerve also will be affected. So simultaneously, patient will be having human type of weakness, even facially. So the patient will have same-sided facial weakness, and along with that upper limb and lower limb weakness. Coming to the sensory part, we know that medial lemniscus is located, and it is the dorsal column pathway which is affected. So pain, touch, the vibration and proprioception sense are affected here. Next, on the cranial nerve nuclei which is affected, or on the it will be on the same side as we have earlier discussed. And the cranial nerve which will be affected here are sixth cranial nerve, leading to diplopia on lateral gaze, and eighth cranial nerve, if the patient is having if it is affected, the patient symptoms will be like nystagmus, and along with that, patient will be having vestibular ataxia. Means when this lesion is when the vestibular nuclei is affected. And as we know that even the middle cerebral peduncle, multiple pontine nuclei are also here. So the fibers will be coming down here. So this has to progress to the lateral side. If the medial part is affected, means there will be cerebellar symptoms, because there will be affection of the middle cerebral peduncle. This is about the inferior pons on the same side, on the contralateral side. Coming to the lower lateral inferior. So we are at the inferior pons only, and we are still discussing the lateral pontine syndrome. So what will happen to the lateral inferior? So the corticospinal tract, medial lemniscus, the sixth cranial nerve, leaving that, and some part of eighth cranial nerve, medial fibers, which will be affected here. along with that middle cerebral peduncle, which will be affected in the medial Pontin syndrome. So in the lateral Pontin syndrome also, there will be affection of the middle cerebral peduncle. So patient will be having cerebellar symptoms. On the same side, the patient will have on the lateral side will have 8th cranial nerve involvement and 7th cranial nerve involvement. So now the patient here can have like, it's no hard and fast rule. How can it lead to UMN type of weakness or element type of weakness at this level? Because at this level the cranial nerve nuclei is affected, so the patient will have element type of cranial nerve, which will be affected on the ipsilateral side, and the 7th cranial nerve will be affected. Even 8th cranial nerve will be. When the 8th cranial nerve will be affected, the patient will be having difficulty in the hearing. Also there will be, means hearing involves assessment of the pitch, frequency, and how far is the sound which is coming. All these things will be affected. Along with that, vestibular nuclei also is affected here. So the patient will be having nystagmus and other vestibular symptoms, which will be on the same side. And we had discussed cerebellar symptoms due to affection of the middle cerebral peduncle, because this So now okay, means now it is okay. Okay, I'll continue. We were discussing about the midpoints. So motors, sensory, cranial nuclei, and lastly cerebellum. Even while examining, we would be getting the multiple symptoms: motor, sensory, cranial nuclei and cerebellar symptoms. Accordingly, we can match what syndrome it will be occurring. So now we had discussed like only one change which will be occurring here is the fifth cranial nerve. Here the significant change is like the sixth fibers are not there. The medial lemniscus will be there. There is medial longitudinal fasciculus. I'll be discussing about this. And here there will be fifth cranial nerve, the principal sensory nuclei, along with the fifth cranial nerve motor, which will be going, which is present laterally. And laterally, the sensory fibers which are located are spinal lemniscus and lateral lemniscus, which should not be forgotten. So what if midpoint level is affected, which is I hadn't discussed which artery is affected in the lateral inferior pontine syndrome. The artery which is affected here is ICA, anterior inferior cerebellar artery. At the level of the midpoints, which arterial will be affected is the so midpoints. So the basilar artery will be supplied here, and there is multiple paramedian branches. So when these vessels are affected, it can lead to medial midpointine syndrome. So what happens here is there is affection of the corticospinal tract, and along with that, patient will be having medial lemniscus which will be involved. And here only the cerebellar features also will be seen because there is pontine nuclei which is present here. So the pontine nuclei, to give an idea, that it is present near whole of the pons in the anteriorly, and along with that some part extend to the lower medulla also, which I hadn't discussed, like which is not of much of importance. These are called arcuate nuclei. If the pontine nuclei, if at all seen in the medulla, these are called arcuate nuclei. Just an information, but nothing means it will be going to the core syndrome what Harrison has taught. So in the midpointine syndrome, we same again here also will do on the same side. What will be affected on the contralateral side? What will be affected? Contralateral side is usually UMN type of weakness contralaterally, which will be seeing, and medial lemniscus, which will be usually affected. Along with that, on the same side, what will be affected here is any cranial nerve will be involved. No cranial nerve will be involved here because there is no cranial nerve medially. As simple as that. And middle cerebral peduncle will be affected here because the pontine nuclei are present medially also. Coming to the lateral midpointine syndrome. So one important here also will be dividing into same side and the contralateral side. So what is the artery affected here? We had discussed like the basilar artery, apart from the paramedian branches, there are short circumferential vessels which will be affected. When these vessels are affected, particularly will lead to particular lateral midpointine syndrome. So what will be there will be no usually affection of the corticospinal tract if it is involving only laterally. And what other fibers also here all it will be involved here is the fifth cranial nerve, sensory fibers, the principal nuclei will be affected. And the spinal lemniscus will be affected. And the lateral lemniscus will be affected. Spinal lemniscus and lateral lemniscus, fifth cranial nerve will be affected, both sensory and motor part. And as usual, middle cerebral peduncle also will be affected since the fibers are traversing in this way. So the combination still it can occur, like total midpointine syndrome, like the patient will be having weakness also with involvement of the fifth cranial nerve and particular sensory levels which will be affected. Next, coming to the superior pons. here, one thing I had not told about here is like MLF. So there are third cranial nerve, fourth cranial nerve, and sixth cranial nerve. So there should be coordinated movement so so that the patient doesn't have diplopia, or the patient horizontal gaze movement will be maintained. So these are all interconnected within this. And this interconnection between the third, fourth, and sixth cranial nerve for the movement of the conjugate horizontal movement, especially, which will be helpful. These fibers are called medial longitudinal fascicles. Coming to the same features: motor, sensory, cranial nerve, and cerebellar. Medial superior Pontine syndrome. So corticospinal tract is affected, and it is usually contralaterally, and medial lemniscus will be affected. The cranial nerve, here the cranial nerve is not usually which will be seen. Any cranial nerve involvement will not be there, and there will be cerebellar features due to involvement of the middle cerebral peduncle or the lower part of the superior cerebral peduncle, because it is very close to the superior pons. So means the superior cerebral peduncle is close to the superior pons. Coming to the lateral, superior Pontine syndrome. So the patient, which vessels will be affected here? Her superior cerebellar artery. So the patient, one important thing which I had not discussed, if it is any lateral syndrome, like the patient will be having descending sympathetic fibers all throughout. So the sympathetic fibers also will be affected throughout. So what happens in the lateral superior Pontine syndrome? So contralaterally, on the same side, on the laterals, contralateral side, what all the things will be seen? So laterally it is affected. Now the medial, at the level of the superior pons, the medial lemniscus comes thoda laterally. So it can be affected in the medial lemniscus can be affected in the both medial superior Pontine syndrome and lateral superior Pontine syndrome, and hence the patient will be having this thing. One thing like Harrison has mentioned about the eighth cranial nerve, which is affected here. They have mentioned about the nystagmus, why it is occurring, but the reason I couldn't get it, like how can the eighth cranial get affected here? Vestibular nuclei, particularly they have mentioned in the Harrison, but if at all, if the symptoms are occurring, it should be due to lateral lemniscus, which is affected here, but not due to vestibular nuclei, which will not be extending up to the superior pons. Because in the midpoints, we haven't discussed about the vestibular nuclei at all, but in Harrison, they have mentioned about the eighth cranial nerve, which will be presented at the cranial. I had this doubt, sir. I tried to clarify. I tried to search for the source, but I couldn't get it. This thing they had mentioned, I doubt it, like if the eighth cranial nerve is involved at the superior pons level, and even it at the laterally. And there will be cerebellar features also. There will be middle cerebral peduncle, which will be affected, or this is a superior cerebellar artery which is supplying the superior aspect of the cerebellum. So the superior cerebellum nuclei also will be affected, and the fibers also will be affected, hence leading to cerebellar symptoms here. Not only due to middle cerebral peduncle which is affected, but also due to the cerebellum alone. But it will be usually ipsilateral. This is about the Pontine syndrome. Coming to the midbrain. So in midbrain, to discuss, same, it has 4 parts. So midbrain, actually, we can divide into base, tectum, and tegmentum. So even the midbrain also is even the pons also is divided into pons. The base and tegmentum. But this is about the anatomy. But when coming to the core, this nuclei or the fibers, how it is arranged. More in the anteriorly, we know that in the cerebral peduncle, we have corticospinal tract, and along with that, there are corticopontine fibers. Frontopontine, corticopont. They have mentioned like corticopontine, frontopontine, paratopontine, temporopontine, occipitopontine. These are the fibers which are located in between these fibers. The corticospinal tract will be affected, and thoda laterally there will be these fibers also. And along with that, the patient in the medial aspect, there is another important structure which we'll be seeing in the midbrain is, which I had earlier discussed, is the substantia nigra. Above that, the sensory fibers will be there. And important another nuclei which will be present is the red nucleus. Above that, we'll be having third cranial nerve and fourth cranial nerve. The fourth cranial nerve is located at the level of the inferior colliculus, and the third cranial nerve is located at the level of the superior colliculus. This is the only significant difference, and along with that, the colliculus which is there present. So at the posterior most aspect, we have superior colliculus. So midbrain sections can be divided into superior colliculus and inferior colliculus. So these colliculus are like elevations in the midbrain, which we are seeing, the superior colliculus. So it will be receiving the fibers from the eyes. Means the pathway from the visual where it contributes for the like it is a part of the visual pathway, whereas inferior colliculus is part of the vestibular pathway. This is the function of the respective nuclei. Along with that, we have superior cerebral peduncle, which is located at the posterior aspect, which will be attaching to the cerebellum. So if the lesions, the only difference is like third cranial nerve will be here, superior colliculus, and along with that, the Edinger-Westphal nucleus, all those will be there. Along with that, there is a fourth cranial nerve nuclei, which will be located at the inferior colliculus. So medial midbrain syndrome and lateral midbrain syndrome, there are many named syndrome. The medial midbrain syndrome is also called as like Weber syndrome. What will be affected here are like the patient corticospinal tract is affected. So the patient also will be having involvement of the nuclei, cranial nerve nuclei, third cranial nerve nuclei, which is located medially. And lastly, the superior cerebral peduncle also will be affected. So the patient will be having contralateral UMN weakness, contralateral, the sensory fibers also will be involved. Medial lemniscus will be involved here, and the cerebral third cranial nerve will be involved at the same level, but it is ipsilateral because all the cranial nerve which will be affected at the brainstem will be ipsilateral. There will be affection of the middle cerebral peduncle also. And in the lateral midbrain syndrome, the red nuclei will be present through laterally. Red nucleus which will be affected on the contralateral side. Third cranial nerve which will be affected here also. This lateral midbrain syndrome is also called as Benedict syndrome. And there is involvement of the cerebellum, not particularly due to the involvement of the superior cerebral peduncle. Instead, there is an involvement of the dentate nucleus, which is present in the cerebellum, which will supply through the red nucleus to the thalamic fibers. So this dentate to rubrothalamic fibers is affected. And even the rubrospinal tract also arises from the red nucleus here. So the name syndromes are Weber syndrome, Benedict syndrome, Claude syndrome, Northangel syndrome at the level of the midbrain. So the patient common feature is like they have hemiplegia at all levels, contralateral hemiplegia. But only difference is Weber syndrome will be having only third cranial nerve involvement. Northangel syndrome, the patient will be having the third cranial nerve involvement also and cerebellar ataxia also. And the Claude syndrome, there will be affection of the contralateral hemiplegia, third cranial nerve, and cerebellar ataxia also will be there. And along with that, the patient will be having involvement of red nucleus, will be producing tremor symptoms. So till now, we have discussed about the lesion at the level of cord, lesion at the level of the midbrain, at the level of the brainstem. We have divided into medulla, pontine, and midbrain. At the level of the medulla, we have discussed about 4 syndromes: medial medullary syndrome, lateral medullary syndrome, total medullary syndrome, and in ponto medullary syndrome. At the pons level, we have discussed 6 syndromes, and the other three syndromes are like named syndromes only. That is Raymond syndrome. This is a lot of theory aspect only. Miller-Gubler syndrome and Foville syndrome. And the midbrain, we have discussed all the 4. Patient having Weber, Benedict, Claude syndrome, and Northangel syndrome. And we had discussed here also medial and laterally. At the pons, we had discussed 3 parts: superior, middle, mid pons, and lower pons. And each at the level also we had discussed medial and laterally when the fibers, what arteries will be affected. So I didn't discuss about these fibers which is affected in the lateral midbrain syndrome. Is the penetrating arteries from the posterior cerebral artery. So when the basilar artery will be divided into posterior cerebral artery, the lateral aspect will be supplied from the lateral aspect of the midbrain will be supplied from the posterior cerebral artery. So it will wind up around the midbrain. It will these fibers, the artery will wind up around the midbrain, and henceforth will supply the medial temporal lobe and occipital lobe. In further, we'll be discussing that also. And the lateral aspect is supplied from of the midbrain, supplied from the posterior cerebral artery. Coming to the medial cerebral artery, which will be affected, is the same here also, like pons. Medially, right? So the patient will be, before dividing, the basilar artery itself will be supplying the medial aspect. That will leading to particular syndrome. So we have discussed up to a level of pons and the up to the level of midbrain. Now what all other 2 structures we are left out with at the level of the internal capsule, at the level of cortex. So the fibers we had earlier discussed from the cortex, it will move between the basal ganglia and thalamus as internal capsule, and these fibers below thalamus there is subthalamus, and these fibers will further continue along with that. And we have substantia nigra which is present at the level of midbrain. This corticospinal tract will progress as the corticospinal tract as a cerebral peduncle in the midbrain. Now we'll look at a lesion where when the lesion is occurring at the internal capsule. So internal capsule as structure as like anterior part, posterior part, and genu. So one terminology here, it is there is dense hemiplegia. So dense hemiplegia indicates that the patient will be having significant motor weakness both in the upper limb, both in the lower limb. So the patient will be having, along with that, if at all a lesion is occurring at the level of the internal capsule, there is triple H. There is hemiplegia, hemisensory loss, and homonymous hemianopia, because the optic radiation fibers will be traversing at the posterior aspect of the internal capsule. Even the auditory fibers also will be traversing through the internal capsule at the posterior aspect. So what are the blood supply which is important when this internal capsule is affected is, we'll be discussing it further, but first I'll discuss here only. The middle cerebral artery, after divide the internal carotid artery dividing into anterior cerebral artery and middle cerebral artery, it will traverse through the sylvian fissure. Then it will move over the cortex, dividing into superior division and inferior division. This one is the M1 aspect, and this two is the M2 aspect. So at the M1 aspect, M1 level, the patient will be producing lenticulostriate branch. So this will be supplying globus pallidus also, this putamen also, some and also it will be supplying the internal capsule. And where at all means, if it is supplying means it is supplying the genu, some of the anterior part, and along with the posterior 1/3. So this is the most common site of arterial rupture, or the most common site of intracerebral hemorrhage. So that's why this lenticulostriate, whenever there will be fibrinoid necrosis which will be occurring in these vessels very early, so that's why the patient will be having intracerebral hemorrhage mostly at this site only, at the lenticulostriate branches. So the lenticulostriate branches are around 10 to 12, which will be supplying all of the internal capsule and the basal ganglia also. This is about the arrangement of fibers are, there are multiple fibers which we have to remember is why, if the middle cerebral artery is affected, why the patient will have hemiplegia is because there is corticobulbar tract and corticospinal tract which is located at the level of genu and in the posterior limb. So that's why this patient will be having hemiplegia. Coming to the lesion at the cortex, we know that there is a motor homunculus. We had discussed that arms are located, the legs are located in medially, arms, face, next neck. All these are the motor fibers controlling those are located laterally. So if the patient is having anterior cerebral artery syndrome, the patient will be having leg weakness. Along with that, some amount of motor weakness in the upper limb also. This concept will be studying later. Coming to the arterial system, sir, shall I go ahead with completing this?
How much time will it take, guys?
And actually, there are multiple syndromes also. Like, should I discuss everything?
Oh.
Sorry,
what do you think?
Means, is it too much for one day? Means I will stop, ma'am, because I'm not going away from Harrison.
No, it's okay. You continue. If you're not tired, please continue. If you're not tired.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, by yourself, you can read the arterial supply, ma'am. But I would be going ahead with the particular arterial syndromes directly.
Okay.
Okay. So internal carotid artery will divide into anterior cerebral artery. So the anterior cerebral artery will go initially anteriorly, then wind up over the genu of the corpus callosum. Then it will supply the medial aspect of the brain here. So before, what is A1 segment and A2 segment in anterior cerebral arteries? Before communication with there is an anterior communicating artery which will be communicating both of the anterior cerebral artery. So this will be there. If this is the A1 segment and this is the A2 segment. So if A1 segment And had another doubt, like, ma'am, shall I directly go ahead with syndromes? Like, shall I tell about what arterial supply does it help supply? And short wave, okay, okay, sir. So in the A1 segment, it gives multiple branches, cortical branches. What all it supplies? It supplies the hypothalamus. It supplies the caudate nucleus. It supplies the limbic pathway, anterior limbic pathway. So this, whenever these are affected, if this segment is affected, so the patient will not have any symptoms, because there is anterior communicating artery which will be going, the blood supply will be given to the other part of the brain, so that there will be no compromise whenever the A1 segment is involved. If A2 segment is involved, means beyond the communication, anterior communicating artery, so all cerebral arteries are end arteries, so which it will supply the medial aspect of the frontal lobe, it will supply the medial aspect of the parietal lobe, and some all the functioning of the frontal lobe medially it will be affected. And important one which we have to remember is the medial aspect, there is legs, which the fibers controlling the legs in the frontal, means these fibers will be affected, so the patient will be having lower limb weakness than upper limb weakness. And along with that, the patient in the medial aspect will be having paracentral lobule also. So that's why the patient will be having urinary incontinence. And along with that, parietal lobe medially also is affected, and the same sensory homunculus is also reflected here. The patient will be having sensory symptoms more in the lower limb than upper limb. This is about A2 syndrome. And coming to the M1 syndrome, M1 segment I had earlier discussed, like if the patient means the fibers means after arising from the internal carotid artery, it is going through middle cerebral artery. This segment is called M1, and it gives multiple lenticulostriate branches. So if these are affected, lenticulostriate branches, we know that what at all it is supplying. So it is supplying the internal capsule. So it will produce triple H syndrome. That is hemisensory loss, contralateral hemiplegia, that is dense hemiplegia, and homonymous hemianopia because affection of the optic radiation, but there will be macular sparing usually at the level of the and along with that, patient is also supplied at the level by the putamen also. So the patient can have early rigidity, all those Parkinson kind of features will be seen when M1 segment is affected. And it is usually arterial, which will be rupturing because the intracerebral hemorrhage which will be occurring at this site. Coming to the M2 segment, after traversing through the sylvian, through the between the parietal lobe and the temporal lobe, as a whole, to tell, sir, like there are multiple levels, like M1, there it is no hardened. Actually, the De Jong has divided the middle cerebral artery into 4 parts: M1, M2, M3, and M4. But just I'm covering the M2 syndrome and M2 part only. Means how they have divided, like the artery will wind up around the insular cortex, then it will go to cortical branches. This is how actual artery looks when the blood vessel is affected, means when it is taken out. They have divided into M1 segment, M2 segment, M3 segment, and M4 segment. But we'll be discussing directly into M2 syndrome, whatever Harrison has given. So the M2 syndrome is there will be stem, there will be 2 branches. So what all the branches it is supplying? On the medially, it will traverse through Sylvian Fraser, then it will divide it to multiple branches it will be giving. So there is superior division also, there is inferior division also. What happens when superior division is affected? What happens the inferior division is affected? We'll discuss here. When the superior division is affected, this will supply the lateral aspect of frontal lobe. So the patient's arm, face weakness will be there, and along with that involvement of Broca's aphasia, the Broca's area. So the patient will be having aphasia. So one thing to note, if the patient is having purely ACA syndrome, aphasia is less likely. If aphasia is there in a patient, it is definitely that the middle cerebral artery is involved. Even the inferior division will supply the Wernicke's area here. So one clue is like to differentiate from the ACA syndrome and MCA syndrome. And along with that, the arm upper limb weakness will be more common than the lower limb weakness. And the lateral aspect of the parietal part also is supplied by the this arteries only. So the patient will be having as according to the sensory homunculus, upper limb sensory symptoms will be more common. Sensory symptoms and even sensory findings will be more common than lower limb. If the stem is affected, it is similar to whole. It can have patient can have global aphasia now, because both Wernicke's or Broca's both occur in the same patient. Along with that, the patient will be having weakness. This is about M2 syndrome. Coming to the P1 syndrome, this is bit complicated. Like in the Harrison, they have given very vastly and all the in the diagram, whatever there is one diagram where the figure 4.14 and 5, they have given various syndromes name, where the when the posterior cerebral artery is involved. In the P1, the posterior cerebral artery divides. After dividing, there is a communicating artery from the internal carotid artery, which will divide the posterior cerebral artery into P1 segment and P2 segment. And P1 segment, when it is affected, so P1 segment predominantly supplies, the patient will be 3 reasons it will be supplying. One is the thalamus, one is subthalamus, and substantia nigra. All these 3 segments are supplied by the P1 segment. So the patient will be having thalamus. If involvement is there, there will be Dejerin-Rousseau syndrome, that the chronic burning pain, the patient will be complaining contralaterally because involvement of the thalamus, because affection of the P1 segment. Substantia subthalamus, when it is affected, it is a part of the patient can have contralateral hemibalismus. And substantia nigra, when it is affected, the patient will have contralateral tremors. And other along with that, there is Weber, Claude, Benedict, and this Northengel syndrome, which can occur when the P1 segment is affected. Coming to the P2 segment, it will wind up, after winding up around the middle, it will supply the lateral aspect of this midbrain also. It will supply the temporal lobe also, and it will supply the occipital lobe also. So the patient still can have the lateral midbrain syndromes, and when the temporal lobe is involved, the medial temporal lobe is involved, the optic fibers are still going around to the occipital lobe. So the patient can have congruent hemianopia, that is, but there will be still macular sparing. In the occipital lobe, there is an area which will be spared, which will be supplied by only P2 segment, and this is the reason where the macular sensory fibers will be there, or the sensory fiber nuclei will be there. So affection of P2, the patient will be having homonymous anopia with macular involvement. So M2
Gaga,
segment, sir.
Shouldn't it be quadrantopia?
Quadrantopia.
It's only temporal, right? That is being
Okay,
affected.
sorry, I missed out this point, sir. It will be quadrantopia only. And if it is affecting this P2 segment at the occipital lobe, it will be
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
complete hemianopia with macular involvements. So I had missed this point, sir. This is about posterior P2 syndrome. So whenever like how to diagnose in a patient with hemiparesis. So first we'll be identifying both the limbs are involved or not, and upper limb and lower limb weakness on the unilateral side. With UMN type, you will think of a lesion above C5. So then next you will examine the facial nerve directly. Then you can come to an approach like if the patient on the same side, like upper limb weakness, lower limb weakness, and the face also involved on the same side, then it indicates a lesion at the level of the cortex and at the level of the subcortical region, or at the level of the internal capsule, which is contralaterally, like other side the lesion is there. And incomplete, it will be around the lower medulla or at the cord, or in the crossed, the patient is having opposite side ipsilateral facial weakness and contralateral upper limb and lower limb weakness, then the lesion is at the level of the brainstem, usually at the pons or at the medulla. So after coming to this part, then at the cortex, what it is then, how upper limb involved, how lower limb is involved, how incontinence is there, and how along with that sensory symptoms is there. If upper limb is less involved, lower limb is more involved, with incontinence is there, then sensory involvement predominantly in the lower limb, then we'll think of ACA syndrome. If MCA syndrome, there is affection of only the upper limb predominantly, less likely of lower limb, and incontinence will be less likely. The patient will will have the sensory symptoms and predominantly upper limb over the lower limb, and the patient will be having aphasias, both aphasias, Broca's aphasias and Wernicke's aphasias. And within the MCA, there can be dense hemiplegia. The concept of dense hemiplegia is the upper limb and the lower limb weakness power will be equal. Means it will be almost nil only. So that is the concept of dense hemiplegia, which is occurring at the internal capsule. The posterior cerebral artery, which I had discussed, it has no relation with the upper hemiplegia, but rather the patient, to cover the whole of the stroke syndromes, had covered it. So if it is occurring at the brainstem, if there is cross hemiplegia, you will simultaneously look out for the other cranial nerve involvement, 8th, 9th, and 10th and 12th cranial nerve. If it is involving that, then it is affecting the lower medulla. And if it is affecting the 5, 6, and 7, 8, it is at the level of pons. And if it is affecting the eye, means third and fourth cranial nerve, the eye will be like due to third cranial nerve involvement, the patient, all the function will be lost, and unopposed action of the superior oblique fibers and even from the lateral rectus fibers, the eye will be laterally and displaced downwards. These features will be seen. So along with that, patient will be having cerebellar symptoms. So vertebrobasilar system means predominantly involves the cerebellar symptoms. So this completes like hemiparesis approach as a whole and individual syndromes as a whole, stroke syndromes as a whole. I could have discussed the vascular anatomy, sir. It will take means again 20 minutes. Tak ho jayega.
Okay, thank you, Gagan.
Okay.